Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead, where today we're going to have some fun with biscuits. You know that I love different biscuit recipes. Before we start today, I just have to tell you what Jim and I did yesterday. We just hopped in his car early afternoon. You know, it's the middle of winter here. It's February. Usually we have such cold weather and sometimes even snow. It was in the 60s yesterday. And so we just decided to drive over to Zion National Park. Now, Zion in winter is spectacularly beautiful with the snow. It's beautiful anytime. Yesterday when we got over there, of course, there was no snow. It was 61 degrees. It was beautiful and it was very dry. But we drove through the park and we just had a wonderful time. But we really hit the jackpot on wildlife viewing. And Jim, help me to see if we can remember everything. The first thing was that flock of wild turkeys.
Yeah.
And then it was deer next. We saw some deer. No, it was the bighorn sheep.
Bighorn sheep.
The bighorn sheep. And then we saw the herd of buffalo.
That was on the way out.
Yeah, that was on the way out after we got out of the park, though. But so before the buffalo came the deer.
Yeah.
And then we were coming down the hill after we left the park, and off to the left were some tall pine trees, and sticking right above the pine trees was this white head. And I said, Jim, there's a bald eagle. And we looked over, and sure enough, it was a bald eagle whose head was sticking up about this far from the treetop. And so we quickly turned around and tried to go back to find it to see if I could get it on camera. But no, it had either flown away or it had ducked down in the tree so that we couldn't see it anymore. And then we saw
saw cattle too.
yeah, we saw a lot of cows, but we saw a roadrunner on top of a fence post. So it was just a delightful day. I love Zion. It's one of my favorite places on earth. So it was a very relaxing day. And you all know that just being out in nature renews me, and many of you have said the same thing. So it was a great day to be out in nature. But today we are going to be making angel biscuits. I just happened across this recipe, and it is a Southern United States recipe. And you know, Southern bakers are renowned for the wonderful things that they can bake. My first husband was stationed when we were in the public health service. We put in 2 years or 3 years in the Native American clinic in Winslow, Arizona. Now, I was born in Arizona, but that part of Arizona where we were in Winslow is so different than where I was born in Prescott. And our second child was born there. But the other dentist and his wife became our very good friends, and they were from Georgia. And I got some wonderful recipes from her. She was a fantastic cook. So I know about Southern baking and aspire to be as good as some of those wonderful Southern bakers. This is a recipe out of the South, and it's called angel biscuits because supposedly even a newlywed it's so easy for this recipe to be made. And the unique thing about this biscuit recipe is that it has 3 different leavening agents: yeast, baking powder, and soda. So there you go. So we're going to try it. And I've never made these before, so this is purely an experiment, which is something I usually don't do on our channel. I usually test things ahead of time. But I thought, let's just have some fun with this and see how it goes, and see if we want to include that in our regular recipes, and if it is something that we could do in using just our food storage. And you know, all of these things, all these ingredients are certainly in level 1. So it probably we could make a case for that, but let's see if we like it well enough after we make them. When I was doing my research ahead of time, looking up recipes, they're all very, very similar, and there are a lot of angel biscuit recipes online. Several of them make a huge batch, like 24 biscuits. Well, we're not serving multitudes around here, so I wanted a recipe that would just make sort of a sampling so we could see if we like them or not. And I did find one. This is called Divas Can Bake or something. I'm going to put the link to this recipe below the explanation of the video so that you can have it too. I'm switching up the the methodology just a little bit to the way I bake. They have you stir up the yeast with a little bit of sugar and water first and let the yeast bloom. I don't ever like doing that. So I'm just going to put all of the dry ingredients in here, mix them together, and then add the shortening, cut the shortening in, and then the liquid. So let's just get going. So first of all, it calls for 2.5 cups. Let me check that. 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So here's our flour. And when measuring flour, I always aerate the flour just a little bit. And this is King Arthur unbleached all-purpose flour. And then we spoon it into the cup rather than dipping the cup in. So there's 1, 2 and half. Now, 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and here's our 4th cup. And our granulated sugar goes in. And next is 1 teaspoon baking powder. And it is 1/2 teaspoon of soda. And then at this point I'm going to put the yeast in. So it's 1 packet of yeast, which is the same thing as 2 1/4 teaspoons. So here is 1, 2 1/4. And back in the freezer, and a teaspoon of salt. Now, when putting the yeast bloom together, they also added 1/4 cup of warm water and a teaspoon of sugar. So I may have to add a little bit of extra water. I'm not going to add the extra sugar. I don't think that's going to make that much difference, a teaspoon, but we'll see. So now I have on this plate 1/2 cup of butter and 1/2 cup of butter-flavored Crisco, and those are going in, and I've chopped them into little pieces just to make it the mixing a little bit easier. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to use the pastry blender and blend. I'm going to cut the fat into the dry ingredients until it's about the texture of cornmeal. So I'm just going to be doing this for probably about 5 or 6 minutes. So we'll go off camera to finish this, and we'll come back when everything is all blended. So a couple of years ago, maybe longer than that, I watched a video of a young man, a baker, making biscuits. And he did something that I really, really liked the idea of. Now, I did the preliminary mixing with the pastry blender, but he got into the dough with his fingers. And when he came to a lump of fat, he would smash it between his thumb and his index finger into what he called little leaves, like leaves on a tree. And then put it back into the dough. And so I've been doing that for 2 or 3 minutes. He said that it really contributes to the layering of the biscuit. So I thought that made sense. And so I have done that quite a bit. So I'm going to wash my hands, and I'll be right back. All right, so here we have our dough. The dry ingredients plus the fat that has been cut in. And so now we're going to add the liquid. It calls for a cup of buttermilk. This is a cup of buttermilk that is reconstituted from our buttermilk flakes that we freeze dried. Now, when I reconstitute it, it is never as thick as the store-bought buttermilk. You can see it's just like water. So I'm not going to add that extra 1/4 cup that was used for the yeast in the original. I'm just going to add this, and we're going to stir this and see. I want to get all those buttermilk solids in here. See what it's like without that extra 1/4 cup of water from what they used to mix up the yeast. So I think we are going to be okay. Yes, we are. Okay. Just going to do a little mixing here. Now I'm going to turn this out on the countertop, put a little bit of flour down. And we're going to knead it very, very lightly, just to sort of bring the dough together. Now I'm going to pat it out and fold it, and pat it out and fold it. And then this time, I'm going to pat it out and leave it. Folding it that way helps the biscuits create the layers. And we're going to leave it to where it is about an inch high. Jim, does that look like it's about an inch to you?
Close.
Okay. Okay, and now I'm just going to cut. Now I have a very sharp biscuit cutter. I'm going to go down and up without twisting. Twisting will seal the edges to where it won't allow the biscuits to rise as much. Now this is supposed to make about 8.
Don't twist.
Oh, my biscuit police right there. Okay, now I'm going to have enough for probably 3 more. Okay, so this pan is not going to be big enough.
Not for 8.
Not for, it's going to be, because here's 8,
Well, yeah.
and I'm going to have 10 or 11, maybe almost 12, so I'm going to get another pan. I have just sprayed it, so let's see what these are going to do. I might, you know what? I might make this into cinnamon sugar long strips that my mother used to do with pastry, cinnamon sugar strips. So I think I'll do that. So I'm just going to set that little bit aside. Okay, now, because this has yeast in it, we have to allow them to proof. And so if you are just going to use your countertop to do that, then you can cover it with plastic wrap, or I have these little food covers that work just great. And we'll let that go for about an hour. But because I have a combi oven that has steam, I'm going to put these uncovered in my combi oven to proof. And I'm going to do that at 80 degrees for about 40 minutes instead of an hour. And I'm going to use 60% steam. Now, if you don't have to be that fancy with this. You can just do it the regular way. But for those of you that might be curious about how I use my combi oven for proofing, let's go over there and I'll show you. So I have put them in the oven. I'm closing the door. And it thinks maybe it is parsnips or chicken wings. No, not what I wanted. So I am just going to go back to the main menu, and I'm going to slide over to where I can do the manual. So I am going to set it for 80 degrees, and the steam I'm going to set for 60%. And the timer is going to be for 40 minutes. So it's all set, and I'm going to say, start the timer and start the cook. So there we go. The cook really is just going to be the proofing. So I'm going to watch this closely, and we'll bring you back when these are ready. Meanwhile, if you're making yours, just put a cloth over the top or a plastic over the top, and you don't have a combi oven or a steam oven, put it in a warm place to rise for about an hour, and we'll be back when they are ready to go into the oven. I'm going to use my conventional oven to bake, even though I could use this one, because I feel like most of you just will be using a conventional oven. So we'll be back when these are ready to go in. So these have risen and are just about ready to go in the oven. I have the oven preheated to 400, and I am just brushing a little bit of milk on the top of these. It calls for heavy cream. Well, I have no heavy cream, so full fat milk is just going to have to do. And then these will bake for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we will be back. So here they are, just out of the oven, and they look like regular biscuits. So nicely browned on the bottom. Oh, beautiful on the inside. So I'm anxious to taste these. So I'm just going to take a little tiny bite right here with a bit of ghee. It's hot. Very interesting. They're very interesting. They're a perfect cross between a roll and a biscuit. They don't have the airiness that a good biscuit has, but they have the firmness that a good roll has. I think they're very nice. I don't quite know what to think. I don't know quite what my attitude is going to be for these going forward. It was a great experiment to do this cross between a biscuit and a roll. And I hope you try it. I hope we can sort of have a vote whether you liked it, whether you think it's worth making them or not. I love biscuits. I really just love a good, tall, light, airy, buttery biscuit. And I also love a good dinner roll. And I'm not so sure that the cross between them is as good as either of the two individual. The additional thing is, it's really no much more work to make them except for the proofing time. And that could be one of the things that helps me decide whether or not I will be using them. But in any case, it is so nice to have a variety. It is nice to have options and choices that we can make, and especially if we are in very difficult times, can't make it to the grocery store, or the grocery stores are out of everything we need. If we have the ingredients that we can make these, which would be the same as for dinner rolls or for biscuits, and we certainly keep all of those ingredients for long-term storage in our food storage, so we would have options to be able to make this if we needed some kind of a break. They are very good to taste. I'm just not sure that it will be my go-to biscuit recipe because I like something that is faster for when we're doing breakfast and that sort of thing. But let us know what you think. Try it. It's worth a try. They're really good. And then we can sort of get the feel for a lot of people, however you decide that you might use it in your regular routine of baking. So thank you for joining us for this fun experiment, and we will see you again very soon for more fun and more experimenting and more videos.